Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a very special live edition of Wrestling with the Future. I'm your host, Mad Dog DeCipio, joined as I am each and every week by Jammin' Jake Hudson. Jake, my friend, you look a bit different this week. What happened to you, brother?
Let me just say that the hair was getting a little bit matted, so went a little bit different. But we're this is going to be a great show.
You
Great
look
show,
good,
wrestling
man.
fans.
Oh, we're going to have a hell of a show tonight. We have a true. You don't want legends. The word legend in the wrestling business is thrown around like the word coffee, tea, and water anymore. But we truly do have a living legend. You're talking about a living legend. Herb Simmons is a guy who has been defined by Burt Prentice, among others, as the consummate wrestling promoter. He is not only a professional in and outside of the realm of professional wrestling, but Herb is a veritable walking encyclopedia on the business of wrestling. You want to talk about a guy that goes back to the heyday of wrestling. Herb Simmons is that man, and I will introduce everyone officially. Would you please welcome to the show a true living legend in the world of professional wrestling promotion, Mr. Herb Simmons. How are you, Herb?
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate that introduction, and it's really my pleasure and my honor to join you tonight because, as I told you, I follow your program as much as I can and as often as I can, and you guys really have it going on, and the guests that you bring on just keep those memories alive, especially what I call the old school
Thank you.
memories.
Thank you, Herb. I'm honored by that. Herb, I have a co-host and a producer here that
Yeah,
is super excited that he's been talking about is Herb.
yeah.
So if
I've
you
been
don't mind, I'm gonna let Jam and Jake Hudson take the first couple of questions. Jake,
yeah.
you got the legend is here, the living legend himself.
How was it working with Bert? With
Bert, Bert Prentice, yeah, when you hold that book up there, it just gives me chills because Bert and I were friends for right almost 50 years. As I told you, I had the honor of being asked to do his eulogy at his funeral, and I had been going down the last couple of years to help him when he got sick. And a lot of people didn't know that. He asked me to come down and do a little commissioner gimmick for him to help take a little load off of him. He had a great locker room there, a bunch of young, great talent that he was working. And, Bert was probably, I always said he was the hardest working man in the business. I mean, he did it all. And like all promoters, he gets bad rap from time to time. But I'm going to
Sure.
tell you, anytime that I needed anything from Bert Prentice or he needed anything from me, we were 5-6 hours away from one another. But that phone call, we'd burn the phone up. And he was great. He had such a great mind for the
Yeah.
business. A lot
He
of
sure
people
did,
said
brother.
a
He
lot of
really
people
did.
said he had the carnival style instinct, but in this business, if it works, it works, and
Yeah.
that was his motto: go out there,
um
make the fans happy, and they'll keep coming back.
Herb, one of the I'm sorry, Jake, for I'm going to throw it back to you in just a second. I'm real curious about something. You said a moment ago that he didn't want people to know he was sick. Was that typical of Bert to not to bother people with stuff like that?
Yeah, and Bert and I, my wife, and his sister Marilyn, sweet lady, will tell you the same thing that we always kept things ourselves. I do the same thing. I don't
Yeah.
share a lot of my personal issues. I mean, people were like Bert or people like Barbara Goodish or Darla Staggs. I mean, they know
Yeah.
personal things. But Bert was that way. He would call me when he was in the hospital a couple different times and say, "Hey, I don't want people to know this. Just let them know
Yeah.
I'm having a little setback or this or that." And I mean, I was on the way
Sure.
down to the show with the Jackson Ballpark, the one for Jerry Lawler's 50th
50th.
50th,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he went to the hospital that night. And and I was
Yeah.
halfway there when I got that message, and but his sister and the locker room stepped up, and that went off without a hitch. And So I mean, it was a great. He was just one of those individuals that he loved the business. You know, his mother started out being the ticket taker for Vern Gagne.
I heard that.
Yes.
Yeah, we heard that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jake.
You know, I got one question. By the way, this. What do you think about Travis Cook?
Well, Travis Cook reminds me of that pain in the royal behind.
Yeah.
I've had to deal with Travis Cook for many, many, many years,
So,
and he's another one. I tell you, I've had, and I know you're familiar with guys like Jim Cornette and Jimmy
Oh
Hart.
God,
yeah.
yeah.
When I've had those guys in, and they've had to deal with him, Travis got to meet Jim Cornette's tennis racket, and he got to meet the megaphone from Jimmy Hart. But they all gave him credit and said, you know, the one thing we're thankful for is that he wasn't out on the road when we were out there because we'd had to step our game up. That's
Yeah,
just the kind.
absolutely.
That's the kind.
You know, you guys called him Travis the Crook Cook.
That's the name I gave him because he is a crook. And
I remember when him and a Telecon came to USA Championship Wrestling.
yes,
Remember that?
yes. Yeah, they followed me down there. In fact, I was doing the commissioner role for Bert then, and he was able to crook his way in, as I called it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they ran roughshod down there for quite a while. And but you know, that was Bert had the act of wanting to bring in those type of the good talents, and that's why Bert and I was able to work together because
Yeah.
you know the territorial days, even though they're gone. People like Bert and I worked together. I was able to send guys down there. He'd send people up here.
Yeah.
And there's only a few promotions that nowadays will even try to do that. Everybody else don't even care about territorials.
Well, and that's a great segue, Herb. You know, we talk about you being the consummate professional and the consummate promoter, but that started somewhere, and I want to kind of smarten everybody up a little bit and educate some people as to how your career began. So let's take some folks back on a journey through the world of wrestling through the eyes of Herb Simmons. When did the wrestling bug bite you?
The wrestling bug bit me just probably like it did all of us at a young age. There was a program in St. Louis called Wrestling at the Chase, probably one of the most watched programs ever.
Yes, sir.
Sam Muchnick is a name that all of your followers would probably know. If not, they need to look him up. And a gentleman that was in charge of the National Wrestling Alliance for about 41 years off and on.
Yeah, actually, the people at home are just looking at that Wrestling at the Chase giant promotional poster that you're next to.
Yeah, we had that made with a lot of the guys that helped make the wrestling in St. Louis what it was and what they still remember it to be to this day.
I have heard stories of legend about the Chase. It's been referred to, Herb, as the quintessential wrestling venue. What made the Chase Auditorium such a hotbed for wrestling?
Well, and again, you had to back in the day, these wrestlers, as you know, they wrestled in every place they could. Some wrestled in barnyards, some wrestled in bars, some wrestled in out in the fields, wherever they could put a show on. Promoters were doing it; they would.
Yeah.
And anybody who wrestled in St. Louis, whether it be the Briscoes, the Funks, Ted DiBiase, Bruiser Brody, people like that, they always said that if you made it to St. Louis at the Chase Park Plaza Hotel in the Coruscant Room, you made it to the big time.
Right.
And you had, the Chase was the place. That's what they said back in the day.
Yeah.
You had kings and queens that stayed there. They had the Vel Prophet ball, annual ball there. Just a historical landmark in St. Louis. And with the foresight of Sam Muchnick and then the Koppler family who owned the Chase Park Plaza Hotel back then, they made a deal on an airplane back in 1958, 59. It started in 59. But Sam and Mr. Koppler was on an airplane with a handshake. Now try making a deal like that with a handshake nowadays and see what it gets. And
Good luck.
you know, Sam had all the talent, and Mr. Koppler had the TV studios, and switched. What came out of that marriage came out of the Wrestling at the Chase program. And everybody, Johnny Valentine, Lorenzo Parenti, Pat O'Connor, Gene Kaniski, Whipper Billy Watson, Lou Thez.
These are names from my youth.
Yeah, anybody and everybody got there.
Wow.
And I tell everybody, I grew up in the housing projects in East St. Louis, Illinois. And we used to have a 12-inch black and white television.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't remember or won't remember that Wrestling at the Chase used to be on Wednesday night. And in fact, the real quick story, Mr. Ed Wheatley, who just wrote the Wrestling at the Chase book that I helped him with, kind of disputed that with me at first because he couldn't find anything about it being on a Wednesday night. And he called me up about 2 weeks after we had talked one day, and he said, by gosh, you're right again. He said, I found some advertisement where it says that, wrestling was on with Joe Garagiola being the play-by-play announcer. He was the first one in 1959.
Yes.
And so he said, you're right. And I said, yep. And we have one of the only tapes known to man from that 1962 show at the Chase Park Plaza with Johnny Valentine on it, Pat O'Connor, Lorenzo Parenti, and Joe Garagiola and Pat O'Connor. And it's kind of unique because after each segment, Joe would give a rundown of the matches.
Yeah.
And that particular tape, he has Pat O'Connor at ringside, and Pat does a couple of the holds on him, the reverse rolling cradle. Yeah. And so we have that. That's the only black, and we actually got that from Joe when Larry Matisek was doing the look back at Wrestling at the Chase. So, because back then all that film was recorded over. The collection
that's remarkable. I want people, for those of you who aren't old enough to know who Joe Garagiola was, you want to talk about a storied career. This guy had a career in wrestling, baseball, television, and film. Okay, now show me one guy that's going to, merge these three or four unlikely marriages together. But Joe pulled it off. Do you know which one he liked the best? I would imagine, say, probably wrestling. I had the pleasure of, and not a pleasure, it was at his brother Mickey Garagiola's funeral we were at. And I was sitting on the end of the second pew next to Yogi Berra and Joe Garagiola. Oh, my God.
And that conversation came up and of what Joe had accomplished in his career. And Yogi had asked him, said, come on now, you love baseball, you love the Day Show. He said, yeah, but I'm telling you, he said, there was nothing like being chased around by Rip Hawk or Dick the Bruiser. So, he really loved the wrestling. He loved Sam Muchnick. And of course, then his brother became the ring announcer there in wrestling at the Chase.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mickey Garagiola. Yeah.
Absolutely. You mentioned a name there that did not go unnoticed, Dick the Bruiser. There was some controversy, in fact, I believe on the book cover or one of the book covers for Wrestling at the Chase. Dick the Bruiser and Bruiser Brody are pictured together. Yeah. Can you tell me the story behind that?
Yeah, that photo made the latest book that just came out that author Ed Wheatley put together, and it was only fitting. We wanted to kind of show back in the day, and of course, Dick the Bruiser in St. Louis and anywhere was a household name back in the day. You could walk down the streets of St. Louis, even to this day. You walk down the streets of St. Louis and ask some of these people, hey, who was your favorite wrestler? Who was the toughest wrestler that you ever saw? And they're going to tell you Dick the Bruiser. And then, of course, along come Bruiser Brody. And of course, there's been all of this controversy of, well, why did they call King Kong Brody this in one area, and then they called him Bruiser Brody here? And they had this thing, oh, well, him and the Bruiser, and they had this big argument. No, it was Sam. Back in that time, they had Dick the Bruiser, they had Bruiser Bob Sweetan, and then, of course, Bruiser Brody.
Yeah.
And of course, in St. Louis, Sam and Larry Matisek came up with the idea, let's call him King Kong Brody. They put him up on the marquee at the Checker Dome in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Holding a lady. And in fact, the lady that Bruiser Brody's holding his arm, Angie, lives over here in Illinois, and she attended Larry's funeral. And she told his story about the day that they were doing the filming up there on that big marquee. It was so windy that they had the microphone actually clip to her dress that she had, because it was the King Kong and Fay Ray is what they were portraying. The King Kong movie. And it was so windy, it kept picking up the mic noise. So they actually took the microphone and clipped it underneath Brody's beard to try to block the wind from blowing.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh,
we have a questioner. Go ahead, Jake. We have a questioner. What do they want to know?
Does Herb have any good, funny Bob Orton stories?
Well, I'm assuming they mean Bob Orton Sr.
Now, I don't know. I didn't have the opportunity to be around his father, but Bob Orton Jr. runs my Ace Wrestling Academy for me here in Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling. In fact, Bob and I are scheduled to go up to Iowa this weekend if the snow gives us a break. Bob's still wrestling, and he trains the people at my academy with some of my talent I have now, Sean Vincent and Frank Haynes, the son of the South, Frankie D, and them guys. And Bob kind of oversees that for me. But anytime you can get in a car with Bob Orton Jr.
Oh, my God.
I was part of helping give Randy his first match at South Broadway Athletic Club in St. Louis.
And that's one of the things, Herb, you touched a sweet spot on me here. The car rides, man. The car rides.
The one thing I want to tell you, that Bob Orton Sr. was on the first wrestling card of 1959 of Wrestling at the Chase.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And I didn't know that Bob Orton Jr. was associated with you at all, quite frankly.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I was on the phone with him yesterday. I'll be on the phone with him tonight because we're going to decide if we're going to Des Moines, Iowa this weekend. And
because there's storms.
They're predicting like 5 to 8 inches of snow up there. And I work with a gentleman from Impact Pro Wrestling, Troy Peterson, up there. And I've sent people up there. Too Cold Scorpio was up there for him a month ago, and now Bob's coming up. And Troy's a great guy, runs a great promotion, and that's another one of those guys that we work back and forth together.
Herb, I have a Bob Orton Jr. story. I actually had dinner with him one night in my father's restaurant. He was there with Larry Sharp, the late Pretty Boy Larry Sharp, my mentor and trainer, and Larry was running a show in Camden, New Jersey at the time, at the Woodrow Wilson High School. All the wrestlers came over to my father's restaurant and bar after the show. And, of course, everyone ate and drank and had a good time. Well, Bob Orton likes to eat, and he can eat a lot. Okay?
Drink a little bit.
Yes. Oh, boy. And I'll tell you a story about that in just a second. We had a menu that was a lot of Italian food and a lot of seafood. Well, he, for whatever reason, it caught his eye. Cream basil scallops. It was a specialty, right? Well, they brought him one out. Next to his hand, the dish looked like a little saucer. He's got some big hands. He's got some really big hands. And they brought this scallops dish out to him. He ate 5 of them. He ate 5 plates of. He loved it so much he ordered 5 plates of it. And then, if this is my beer, it wasn't good enough for Bob. He had a pitcher.
Oh yeah.
And drinking out of the.
Yeah. Now he enjoys some of the Heineken.
Yes, sir. And he liked him some Heineken. He also liked to dance a little bit when he got the music going.
Oh yeah. Well,
Um,
one of the trips that I took with him was with him and Terry Funk in the car together.
Oh my God.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm the type of guy. I'm the biggest sponge there is out there because I soak it all up.
Oh
And
yeah.
I don't care how many times they can tell the stories. I still enjoy them over and over. And when you got
Yeah.
him and Terry Funk in a car,
Herb,
I
have
mean,
you talked to Terry lately? How's he feeling?
it's been about a month. I check on him. B. Brian Blair, of course, when he's able to.
Yeah.
And I want to give Brian a shout out. He just had a birthday this week, and so Brian has had a little
Yeah.
medical issues himself, but and I know he watches a lot of these podcasts. But Brian,
He was
president of
actually Herb. Brian was supposed to be a guest of ours last year,
the.
and for whatever reason, I
He's
don't
been
know
going
what
through some
happened, but we
issues,
had.
and he had a family matter, and then he got
Oh, you
sick.
know what? That was
Yeah,
that was it.
and of
Yeah.
course, he does a great job with Cauliflower Alley, and
Yes.
I mean, I was out there
Yes.
with him this last year, and he was hurting then. I had received the Red Bastine Award this year, and
My dear late friend, I loved him. Red was my
one of
buddy.
my favorites. When he was
I
in St.
love me
Louis, I
some
tell
Red
you, he was
Bastien.
great. But Brian, yeah, and Brian, I know keeps the track of Terry, but it's been about a month ago when I talked
Yeah.
to him, and what a guy, Terry Funk. I mean, just a prince of a guy.
Jake, go ahead, Jake.
um, actually, I have I actually have one question that I want to ask before. I'm and I'm sorry for asking this question. What is the main title of SICW?
It's the main. It stands for Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling.
The main title, no, the championship.
The champion is
Oh,
the. Oh, I understand now. Sorry. We just got a new championship belt, and it's actually kind of a unique because what I did is Larry Matisek and I and a couple other people years ago started the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame,
oh,
and we inducted people in there that were true professionals of the business, starting with Sam Muchnick, Luthez, Whipper Billy Watson, Johnny Valentine, people like that. I think we're up to 44 people that we've inducted in there over the years.
wow.
The first three inductees that we did, we let the fans actually pick them. And then after that got to be a little bit of a hassle. So Larry, myself, my late great friend Tony Costa, who ran the MMWA over at South Broadway Athletic Club, was on that committee. Nick Rednar, one of my referees.
Mhm.
So, but we didn't put the limousine drivers, we didn't put the movie stars in it. We actually inducted people that contributed to shows in St. Louis, and I've been fortunate enough to have all of the results from anybody who ever wrestled in St. Louis, either at the Chase or at the Keel or at the Checker Dome. They used to keep the
Yeah.
results on 3x5 index cards, and they would use a typewriter.
Yeah.
And so Dick the Bruiser, I can tell you how many matches Dick the Bruiser had in St. Louis, his win-loss record. And so we did, and then the attendance at the Keel Auditorium, they would always document that, how much the house gate was. And we kind of based that on how we did our calculating on some of the guys who was a good draw. But so, the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame is a legitimate Hall of Fame. We have plaques that we brought guys in like Ted DiBiase, the ones that are still with us, the Von Erichs, all of them that made St. Louis so popular, and of course around the country. But St. Louis is where they all wanted to come to, and so I'm really proud of the St. Louis. So what I did on our championship belt, the new one we just had made, everybody who is inducted into the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame, the name is on this title belt on plates.
Yeah.
And it's really a beautiful belt. And like I said, everybody from Sam Muchnick, Larry Matisek, Joe Garagiola, a couple of the referees that's made the list. They're all listed on this, and we call it the SICW Classic Championship title.
Herb, we've got a couple questions from the chat room.
Chad,
Hold on, just a second, Jake. Hold on, just a second. We have a one guest. He calls himself "Take a Lap Dishwasher." He wants to know: does Herb have any Louisville Garden memories?
that was the second question I had for him.
Okay.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I don't. Like I said, my experience was pretty well contained to that St. Louis. I was the Sam Muchnick, basically. Everybody thought Sam had this huge territory.
He
Like
didn't.
no, like the Crockett's, or like
Yeah.
Fritz, or like Paul Bosch. Sam stayed in St. Louis.
Yes, he
And
did.
Herb Simmons stays here in the Midwest. Like I said, with my working with guys at American Championship Wrestling in Missouri, our New Breed Wrestling in southern Missouri, our Impact Pro Wrestling up in Iowa, or Bert when he was with us down in Tennessee, and now the gentleman that's taken over down there, I'm working with him a little bit. But as far as Herb Simmons, as far as going to these other states, or I made my footprint here in Illinois and Missouri, and it'd be 49 years next month that I've been doing it.
It's interesting that area has always been, and I don't know why, and I'm going to find out from you why. It's always been a hotbed. It's so much so that that Sam Muchnick, you're talking about legendary promoters. Sam Muchnick based his National Wrestling Alliance out of St. Louis. Why was the decision made to do that? I've heard a couple stories. I don't know what, of course, I've heard several versions of the same story, all either omitting something or adding something. So I think you're pretty straightforward. So why was the decision made by Sam to base the NWA of St. Louis?
Well, I think the main reason was that Sam was from here. If Sam lived here, was highly respected. Sam worked for the local newspaper, sports writer, for many, many years, and had a lot of ties. One of his best friends back then was Congressman Mel Price.
Okay, sure.
And so, I was that young boy when Larry used to have me tag along with him to the office. He started for Sam Muchnick when he was 16 years old. Got his first paycheck, which was $25. He used to write articles and send them in, and that's how Sam got him over there. He didn't even have a driver's license then. His father, Edwin, would drive us to the office back then.
And that's something.
And I tell the story. I mean, I learned at an early age to do a lot of listening and keep your mouth shut. But
sure.
How I learned that more later on in life is when I first really got to sit down with Sam and Larry at the Fairmount Park Racetrack in Collinsville, Illinois. Sam used to like to go and eat a nice steak, and he liked to, play the ponies every now and then.
Absolutely.
And we're sitting there, and I've told this story. And Larry used to tell it too, because I actually was scared that night, because this was the first time, even though I had been to the office a few times, Sam carried a big stick in the wrestling business.
Yes.
And I'd heard different stories from Larry. Before we'd walk in the office, he'd say, "Zip it up, keep your ears open." But we're sitting there eating dinner one night, and Sam's cutting his steak up, and he's sitting there, and Sam always had a sports coat or a suit on wherever you seen him. I don't care if he didn't have a tie on; he still had a sports coat on or a suit coat. And we're sitting there, and he says, "Herb, Larry tells me you want to get in the wrestling business." And I said, "I don't want to take no bumps. I don't want to do that." And he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, I'm infatuated with the behind the scenes and the promotion part of it. And I'll never forget, he had that steak knife. And now I'm hearing these stories about how he ruled with a rule. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. And he takes that steak knife and he holds it up, and I'm thinking, what's he going to do with this? And he points to his ear and he says, "You keep these open," and points it to his mouth and says, "Keep this closed, and you'll go a long way in this business." And he said, "That's what I told Larry." And he said, "Look at Larry." And I've learned that, and I've done that. And I'm the guy that gets ragged out sometimes because I don't let certain people work for me. Well, Sam didn't let certain people work for him. Look at the Sheik.
Sure.
The Sheik made one, maybe two appearances, I think, to St. Louis, and Sam paid him and said, "I'll call you when I need you again," because the Sheik's type of action didn't fit in what Sam was doing then.
Yeah, sure.
And so, to answer your question, Sam lived here. He was respected. He had so many connections in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Everybody that was traveling from the East Coast to the West Coast wanted to stop in St. Louis because of this beautiful ballroom, chandeliers hanging over the ring.
Yeah.
Mickey Garagiola told the story many times about on a wrestling night, you'd call the girls up and say, "Come on, we're going out for a date tonight. Get all dressed up. We're going to go to the Chase Park Plaza." And they'd pull up in front, valet parking, and the girls would, "Hey, we're going to go in. Who are we going to see? We're going to see Dean Martin, or are we going to see who?" Because all the stars played at the Chase.
Right.
And you'd walk in, and here's this smoke-filled room. Guys smoking their stogies, girls in evening gowns with necklaces. And I got photos of these, and they're on the 1962 film. And the girls would say, "Wait a minute, we thought we were coming to the Chase to see an act." And they said, "You are right here watching wrestling." "Well, where's the food?" "There's the hot dog vendor over in the corner."
There you go.
The Chase was the place. Sam Muchnick was the guy who put it all together. I remember him telling us at one time, "It's like a pie. We're all going to get a piece of the pie.
Yes.
And if there's anything left over, we're going to equally split the leftovers." So in other words, this is what our profits are, but this is the bonus at the end. And if it's a quarter of a piece and all of the people that's a member, we're all going to divide that up. It wasn't, "I'm taking that, it's mine." That's where Sam gained the respect. One of the best payoff, some of these guys, they'll tell you Sam Muchnick, Paul Bosch was probably the two best payoff men in the business.
Yes, sir.
And that's something I think to be proud of. And that's what we try to do at SICW. We try to keep that tradition alive.
Go ahead, Jake. You got questions. I know I can see it in your eyes.
Here's the thing. We have had on this show, we have had Barbara Goodish, we have had Miranda Gordy. We also, and last week we had Princess Victoria.
Among several hundred others, yes.
Oh, yes. I saw the one with Miranda Gordy, and boy, I'll tell you, I tell people all the time, because she's worked for me several times, done some TV work for me also. And in fact, she was scheduled to be with me this coming Sunday, and we had to cancel because of our COVID numbers are so high again here in our area.
Yeah.
So we had to cancel, but she will be back with us. What a piece of talent she is.
I'll tell you what, Herb, if it means anything coming from me, and I got a pretty good eye for talent. I got paid to enlist people. Somebody really needs to give this kid a break. She's really good.
Well, she's going to get it. It's just that she's because she's paying her dues. She's out marketing herself. She's spreading her wing. And that's the other thing, that's probably one of the things I get ragged about the most is that I instituted a policy several years ago, what is called a 25-mile rule. If you work for SICW, I don't want you working 5 blocks away from me. Because if you're my heel, my baby, I can't have the other promotion 5 miles away or 5 blocks away trying to destroy you. So I'm the bad guy. "Oh, Herb don't want this guy to work for him," and they're not smart.
You know what it is, Herb? They don't understand.
They don't. That's what I'm saying. They're not smart enough to understand. I'm looking out for them. When I talk about spreading your wings, I'm talking about what Miranda's doing. Her and the gentleman she travels with, Niles Planquet, as we call him.
Oh, yeah.
Great piece of talent. He's another one that should be somewhere in a bigger federation.
Yes.
But when I tell these guys, you're the same fans are seeing you. 25 miles. When I talked to Dr. Tom Pritchard, I had him on my show that I do. He said, 25 miles, they ought to be kissing your behind because back in the day, you didn't work 100 miles away from where you were at.
And that's no lie.
No. And again, this is 2022. Things changes, but I'm actually trying to tell these young men and women the experience of go out, Go up to Des Moines, Iowa. Go up to Impact Pro Wrestling to Troy Peterson. Go to ACW. Go down to New Breed in Southern Missouri. You're not crossing over the fans. You're going to see people's going to see more of you.
Yeah.
You're going to get that exposure. But I'm the bad guy, but that's okay. I've been a bad guy before.
Herb, we got a question from our chat.
I'll read this one.
Go ahead. Absolutely.
This is from Wong QX. I hear stories about older wrestling that the heels would be so hated that the fans would try to attack or stab the wrestlers. I always wonder if that was true.
That's a true statement. I know several wrestlers that over the years that has been injured. Yeah, it happens, and in business, it's what they call getting the heat. And when you had guys like Dirty Dick Murdoch,
oh man, here you go.
I love Dick when he worked for me. I'll tell you, I always knew that I had to have security just to make sure that he got back and forth to the ring, because he did a promo one time in St. Louis at the Chase Park Plaza. It was in the studio setting back then at that time when he was there, but he referred to Sam Muchnick as Slammin' Sammy. And man, I thought the fans were gonna just tear him apart. But guys like him, even back the days of Dick the Bruiser. I mean, there's a story out there where a lady took a cigarette and just burned him in his back as he was walking by one time. So those stories,
I think Herb, just reminded me, and you probably know the story too. I was at a Cauliflower Alley club. I'm sorry, was at Cauliflower Alley NWA merger convention in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, 1999. It was the NWA 50th, Cauliflower Alley 30th. And Fred Blassie got up, rest his soul, the late Fred Blassie, got up and told a story, Herb, about how they turned his car over, set it on fire, slashed the tire. I mean, they destroyed his car so bad, there was nothing. I mean, Jake, there was nothing left of his car. That's called getting heat, brother.
That's heat.
That's heat. They don't, and these kids don't know how to get heat.
Well, if they do, they want to get cheap heat, and that doesn't.
Can you tell everybody, Herb, what cheap heat is? Please smarten them up.
Well, one of the worst things these wrestlers go out there and want to spit at somebody. That's cheap heat. Larry Matisek and I, and even Sam. In order to work in St. Louis, there was only, and if you go back and look at any of the old footage that I have, there was only a few wrestlers that Sam would allow to get outside of the ring.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everybody gets outside of the ring.
Well,
everybody
I remember
wants to hit somebody with a chair. Everybody wants to do this or that. But, a good wrestler, a good heel, can walk out of the dressing room, out from behind the curtain, and if he is worth his weight in gold, the minute he walks out, they recognize who the bad guy is. He doesn't have to spit on anybody. He doesn't have to flip them off. That's cheap heat. I'm telling you, if somebody spits on me, we got to have a real fight.
You're going to have a problem. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And there was a couple of, over the years, there's been a couple of guys that, that gets me over. No, it don't. It makes you look stupid. It makes my organization look stupid. Go out there, and if you know what you're supposed to be doing, I want you to get heat, because that's what, wrestling is, the good against the bad, the evil, and it's been that way for all these years. But when you go out there, they all want to be Stone Cold Steve Austin and flips, and Steve's a great guy, don't get me wrong, but back what they were doing then, he got a cult going on. It was a following. I don't allow that. You give one of my fans a finger, you talk about somebody's mama, you're not working for me no more.
Herb, I had the legendary wrestling trainer Doc Diamond on the show about 8 months ago. Doc is responsible for training such people as King Kong Bundy, Bam Bam Bigelow. You know who I'm talking about.
All the big men.
Yeah. Okay. And Doc had he had told a story on the show one time about a young man came into his training school and he wanted to know how long it was going to be. This is the first time he ever walked into a school. Wanted to know how long it was going to be before he got a belt. Okay. This is the kind of mentality that these marks, and I'm going to call them marks because they are, okay? They want to know how long before I get a belt. Okay, first of all, understand something. You're not going to get one. The only belt you're going to get is the one that's holding my pants up, okay? And you might get it across your ass if you're not a good boy, okay?
Yeah.
So here's the thing, and I do this ad nauseum, Herb. Like if you watch the show, you know how frustrated I get with the young crowd today.
This is the
If
third
you're
time.
not going to listen to me,
Third time that I saw this.
yeah, listen to the voice of experience. Okay, tell everybody the simple bottom line basics about paying your dues, and listen to the guy. Listen to this man speak. Tell everybody about what we used to call paying the dues.
Well,
What does that mean? Tell them.
well, yeah, it's not walking in the door and paying somebody $5. That's not the dues. You've got
No.
to, back in the day, and I do it to this day. I help put the ring up. I help
There you
take
go.
it down, and again, I've got a ring guy that will do it. But again, I show my locker room, and now I started several years ago. I don't let my workers do that no more because I think it takes away from their stamp, their place in the eye of the beholder per se. But in order to pay your dues, you need to go out there. You need to learn what that ring is made of. You need to tear it up, set it up, tear it down. Bob Orton running the academy for me. He makes them pay their dues. You better be there on time, or guess what? You just made the travel for nothing.
Telling
But
you.
yeah, when somebody comes in and says, "Well, how long will it be before I get a belt?" The question you better be asking is, "How long before you going to get a match?"
Yeah, exactly.
Because and
Yeah.
believe me, I get a couple of messages a week from people from around the country wanting to come to the St. Louis area and wrestle for us. And I make them send me a video, and I make them send me some pictures. First of all, I want to know who you've been trained for. Now, if you tell me you and your friends got together in your parents' backyard and did this and that,
Yeah.
nothing against that, nothing personal, but
Yeah.
that does not fit into my program. Now,
Not
tell
my
me
thing.
that you've been down to Dory Funk Junior's Academy. Tell me you've been to the Ace Wrestling Academy, or tell me you used to go to Harley Race's Academy.
School of
There you
Morton.
go.
Or down to Dr. Tom Pritchard's Academy. Then
School
we're
of
going to talk.
Morton.
Yes, we're going to talk
Sure.
because those guys are teaching them at least the fundamental basics,
Yeah.
And they're paying their dues. Now, that's one way to pay your dues is go out and get properly trained, get you some,
Sure.
learn how to lace your boots up properly, and
That's a
then
start,
come,
Herb.
and then come
That's a
back,
start.
and
We
then when
got you're familiar, Herb, with MJF from AEW.
yes,
Master Jacob Feinstein.
Yep.
yes,
MJF is here's a comment from the chat room.
I'll read this
MJF is
one.
one of the few younger guys that know how to work like an old school heel. So my question for you, Herb, where does that come from? Is that natural? Is that somebody that's an old soul, or do you just either you have it or you don't?
I bet you a hot dog that he's
I
watched
take
some
it.
old school tapes.
There you go.
And you can't go wrong with doing that. I mean,
Nope.
and again, everybody talks about Monday Night Raw, they talk about NXT, they talk about AEW, and they're all great. They are all doing their own thing, right, wrong, or indifferent. People are watching it. Some people don't like this one, they don't like that one.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, you take any guys in my locker room. When I get them, I had them together for a little Christmas deal, and they sit around and talked about the tapes they were watching from 1960 and 1970.
Oh my God.
That's how you learn how to perfect your craft.
My era.
One of the best matches that a young talent can go out there and watch now is Pat O'Connor against Nature Boy Buddy Rogers at Kaminsky Park, and it's on
Kaminsky
YouTube.
Park. 30,000 people.
Biggest crowd drawn back in that day.
In a
go in there and
baseball
watch it.
stadium.
Go out there and watch that match. You know, you didn't see
A classic.
and again, then everybody's gonna, the younger generation. Well, you got, because I get told I'm the godfather and I'm the old timer of the business, and I need to understand this is 2021, 20.
Yeah.
And I understand that I am old, but you can't take away from what I've learned, and you
Well,
can't take
you know,
away the
look,
experience.
We're in the same, but that's why, look, here's the thing, Herb. I had to have somebody on the show that was my peer for a change.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Here you go. Yeah, I appreciate that.
So here's the thing.
And I'm proud of it. And I tell these younger guys.
Absolutely. Oh my God, absolutely. If
all
you
I
guys
want-
out there, if you young guys out there, if you want to learn how to be a singles heel, watch Johnny Valentine.
Oh,
If you want to learn how to tag team wrestle, watch George Becker and Johnny Weaver.
Johnny Valentine, I guarantee, I saw it many times at the Kiel Auditorium, sellout crowds of 12,000 people, 12,800 if you want to know the exact number.
Mm-hmm.
He'd walk from the stage, from behind the curtain, walk down that aisle so methodically. He had that long red bad robe on, and all he had to do is climb up in the ring, and he would get in the center of the ring underneath those lights, and he'd put his hands on his hips, and he'd do a 360.
Exactly.
And people were on their feet. And
what do they call that? Tell everybody what they call that, Herb.
Psychology.
I
Psychology.
love Herb Simmons.
Psychology.
Thank you. We just did a 2-hour show. A 2-hour show on psychology.
He didn't cuss anybody. He didn't flip anybody off. And you know what else? There was no music playing.
No.
No.
There was no. I want these guys to know there was the first time I ever heard music in a wrestling match, probably 1980, 81, maybe.
Yeah.
And it might have been, oh God, it might have been either, I want to say either the Fabulous Freebirds or no, it had to be the Freebirds. Yeah, probably the Freebirds.
Yeah, you know, I want to go back and I don't want to interrupt you there, but we talked about Miranda Gordy, and I want to go back there. Her dad worked for me on spot shows when he was with Bill Watts. They were running in Southern Illinois at a couple of the high school gymnasium, and you know, Terry Gordy, one of the all-time greats, good friends of Bruiser Brody. And I told Miranda, I said, you know, go out there. You're gonna hone your own style, your own, but you can't deny being Bam Bam's daughter. You just can't.
Yeah, because
people know they love that, and she plays it good. And I'm telling you, she's going somewhere.
When we had Miranda Gordy on, someone forgot Miranda's other nickname, the Backstreet Beauty, Angelo.
Yeah, absolutely.
You forgot about that. I had to. I know. I actually have a couple questions. Number one, Herb, what do you think about the lover boy Matt Riviera?
You know, I've been around Matt several times. He worked for Bert quite a bit down there. Great piece of talent. Him and Jerry Lawler had some great matches, and I was kind of disappointed when he decided to retire. But you know, in this business, you know, these guys retire, but hopefully he won't, because he is a good piece of talent. Bert always enjoyed him. He helped Bert out quite a bit down there. So Matt reconsiders.
You know, watching the show and stuff, watching USA. I did send. By the way, I did send the link to the Facebook chat to Casey Gold.
Great guy. He's got some big shoes to fill. You know, he's trying to take over where Bert left off. And in fact, I just talked to him last week. In fact, we're going to be going down there, I think, March the 5th. Telecon is going down, and Travis Cook. And the last I heard, they're going to be taking on Jerry Lawler.
And there's also a comment. You want me to bring this comment up?
Yes, sir.
This is not a question. It's a comment. Go and watch heel 1970s, 80s Lawler, heel Piper on the mic, ready to cause a ride in the arena.
Absolutely.
Oh,
These
yeah.
are guys that all they had to do, Herb, was open their mouth.
Well, and it's true, but and again, if you want to go back farther, let's talk about Ox Baker and Ernie Cat Ladd.
Oh, there you go. Let's
know,
talk it.
I mean, you
Absolutely.
talk about Ox Baker, one of the best mic pieces in the business. I still say that to this day. He could start a riot just by being on the microphone.
I know it.
And
I know.
And then he came along with the heart punch. And, of course, like I said, and then you throw Ernie Ladd in there. And, of course, I know that's going back a little bit farther, but this gentleman's right. Lawler and Piper, Piper, another pro. I mean, I was with him.
There are certain guys. There really are. And Herb, you're absolutely right. Roddy Piper didn't have to do anything, but sometimes just take a microphone and sneer at you.
Well, and then you had a guy like Bob Orton that just kind of stood back there as the ace, as his bodyguard.
Exactly.
And you know what? His arm still hasn't healed up all the way. He's still.
I know, right?
I have another question.
Go for it, Jake.
I actually, what do you think about what I call the flippers? The guys that do the flips to win matches.
Yeah.
They drive me crazy.
Yeah. Well, again, I get that question asked all the time. And, what do you expect when they're watching, hours and hours of what's on TV now? Because that's what's on there. And that's why I said, they're infatuated with that. And it's, it's what they think is called high spots. Those aren't high spots. Those are just a spot. They get a little pop for 5 seconds and they're blowed up. And then what do you do?
Well, what happens when you can't work? You go for the cheap one. It's like anything else. If you can't work, if you can't draw heat, if you can't, get a pop, you get a cheap pop, cheap heat. You work lazy and you work.
And here's the thing I want to make clear: I've never ever been a worker. Never have I claimed to be a worker.
Right.
But neither was Sam Muchnick. Neither was Larry Matisek. Some of your greatest promoters out there that were very successful weren't workers. But what we know is we know what fans like to see.
That's what I got paid for.
Exactly.
That's what I got paid for. I never were. I've taken a few bumps, as part of angles and stuff.
Yeah, Travis cracked one of my ribs for me down in USA Championship Wrestling. But
I've seen that you were doing a interview for you were doing it there for SICW. You were saying what's up,
and then Telecon and him jumped me.
Yeah,
that's why I call him a crook.
I also gotta say I don't call myself a wrestler. I don't know how to take a bump. I'm not a wrestler. I'm a fan that loves wrestling.
Oh boy, does he too, man.
I watch
I do too.
I watch. By the way, on my Twitch channel, I have my own Twitch channel. I actually have in my panels, I actually have a logo to the PWN, the Apprentice Wrestling Network.
Well, thank you.
I do support what you guys are doing, what the PWN is doing.
I'll tell you what, Herb. If there's wrestling to be found, I can assure you that Jammin' Jake Hudson is watching it.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, we're getting ready to launch our own Roku channel, so it's going to be coming out next week.
Okay.
Well, we're going to talk about that too. Jake is my wrestling guy, and I'm going to be honest with you. And people who watch the show, they know this. I can't stomach but maybe 10 minutes of wrestling these days. I can't watch it.
I have.
Bert, I'm sorry, Herb. We're talking about Bert Prentice over here. Sorry, but Herb, I can't watch but maybe 10 minutes of it because I have to walk away. I have to turn my head. It physically disturbs me to like scream at my television. You're doing it wrong. Don't I'm shouting instructions like a coach to my television. That's how bad it is.
And again, we can't blame, like I said, this younger talent that's out there that's wanting to follow their dream. I tell them all, follow your dream, try to catch it. But when their mind gets programmed to what they're watching, and they think that that's what it is, and we try telling them, slow down, work smart. You don't have to work fast. And
Thank you.
That's why when you go back and look at some of the old classic tapes, watch a Jack Briscoe against a Dory Funk Jr. match.
Oh, classic.
I mean, come on. I mean, they very seldom touch the ropes. Their reversals, takedowns.
Yeah.
And then they heat it up a little bit, but again, they're not doing all the flips as you said, Jake. It's more of a telling that story.
Yeah.
Because some of these guys that are out there trying to do it, and I don't talk about big guys because I've been a big guy all my life. But if you go out there and you try all of that stuff in the first 3, 4, 5 minutes and you get blowed up, guess what? What are you going to do next? You're going to sit on your thumb in the middle of the ring.
And that's like the so-called promoter in Florida who allowed his son. First of all, as a promoter, you should be beaten. As a parent, you should be bitch slapped. There's a father who happened to be his son's promoter in Florida, did a swanton off the second balcony of a shopping mall.
No,
who said that? Hold on, Jake. Who said that was a good idea?
I think you're thinking about New Orleans.
Oh, New Orleans. I'm sorry. You're right.
You're thinking about Wildcat Wrestling out of New Orleans.
Yeah, well, you notice they're not running anymore, I don't think.
Listen, by the way,
you asked the right question. Who said that was okay to do that? It just not good ideas.
I don't understand it. I can't fathom what happened to the wrestling of Ricky Starr and Baron von Roschka and
great
oh
guy.
My God,
I talk to Baron all the time. He's a great guy.
And I spent an hour with Jim Roschka in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Little Jimmy from Nebraska.
That was the most educational hour I spent with anybody.
Quick story about Jim Roschke. His first match in St. Louis was against Pat O'Connor.
Yes.
And and Jim doesn't make bones about he has a vision problem, and of course, first time ever at Kiel Auditorium. And if you didn't know Kiel Auditorium, you could get lost real easy with all the alcoves and the rooms and the hallways.
Yeah.
And when it was time for a match, they sent Pat to the ring first, and he's out there in the ring. And Jim comes out of the dressing room and makes the wrong turn, and is trying to find his way. And as you're walking around the hallways at each area where you can look out to see the ring, he could make out the lights in the ring, and he's trying to figure a way to get there. And when he finally gets to where he thinks he can get through the crowd, he's actually on the opposite side of the arena.
Oh my God.
And he's fighting his way through the crowd. He's got that red cape on, and he's swinging the arms, and everybody thinks it's really, hey, this guy's a maniac. This is the Baron. He's going to get in and do the goose step and the claw, and he gets in the ring.
And they're not realizing he just can't see.
He can't see. He can see the lights over the ring, and Pat's hung out there to dry. He's in there. He's what the heck is going on? And Jim gets in there, and the announcements get made, and they tie up. And Pat says, "Where in the hell have you been?"
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
But yeah, he actually got lost his first trip in the Kiel Auditorium.
Go ahead, Jake.
I can't say this name right. You're one of yours, Joe
LeDuc.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I can't say names right. I can't say names right.
That's all right, Jake.
Tough guy. Angie, you remember Joe, don't you? Joe LeDuc?
Yep, Joe LeDuc.
Yeah.
Someone asking a question about Joe LeDuc. I don't know what they're asking, but okay.
He was a tough guy. He was a tough guy.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to know if you have any Bobby the Brain.
Bobby the Brain Heenan.
I can tell you, Bobby the Brain Heenan was the only manager that Sam Muchnick ever allowed to work in St. Louis.
That I know.
Yeah, because he was a manager and he wrestled. He managed the Blackjacks, Blackjack Lanza and Mulligan, and Bobby, a great guy.
Andre.
Oh yeah, Andre, great guy. Had many talks with Andre. Everybody was the boss. Sam would bring him over to and that's another. People say, man, I remember going to Wrestling at the Chase and seeing Andre the Giant, and for a long time I used to argue with him. Say, no, Andre never was at Wrestling at the Chase. Oh, yes, he was. I saw him there. And so finally, I'm very fan oriented, and my fans are like extended family. And so I would say, okay. But the real true story is Andre never wrestled on TV at the Chase because it was a studio setting. It was such a small studio, and he was such a huge man. What they would do is when they were bringing him into the Kiel Auditorium for a match, they would send in clips from other parts of the country, and they would show them on the Wrestling at the Chase program. But he never actually physically wrestled at the Chase. And it was like after they would have a Kiel Auditorium match, Sam would bring him over to a place in Belleville, Illinois called Jack English's. It was a small pub where he wouldn't be bothered because usually wherever Andre went, somebody wanted to try to challenge him. And it never turned out good for the challenger.
Never. Absolutely never.
I actually do have a question.
Go for it.
What do you think about Trevor Murdoch winning the 10 pounds of gold?
Well, it was great. I was there the night of the NWA 73, and I owe all the thanks in the world
I have that one.
To William Corrigan, because he has helped me out, because then we were the first company that Trevor defended that title to here in St. Louis. He defended it against Telecon. And, of course, the Telecon come up short that night. There you go. Because Travis Cook is managing them. But Trevor...
Why don't you ban Trevor... not Trevor. Why don't you ban that guy, put him in a shark cage, ban Travis Cook, put him in a freaking shark cage or something?
Well, there's a thing that's called an agreement that I have with him, and that should be coming to an end here real quickly, and then we'll see what happens and what changes. But in the business, we have to do what's right for the business and best for the business. And sometimes we have to eat crow. And I've always said if I got to eat crow, I at least want to have something to say about how it's cooked.
Exactly. I think Jake's trying to work angles here. Jake, are you trying to work angles here? What are you doing?
No,
he's trying to write a program for me.
Exactly.
I'm trying to help. Listen, number one, I didn't like how he used a spike on a guy at USA.
Yes, he did.
You know
who he got that spike from?
Who?
Kevin Sullivan.
Kevin Sullivan.
Oh, I love Kevin.
You know Kevin Sullivan?
He's been on my show twice.
Great guy.
You know what?
I love Kevin. Great guy.
The thing is, sorry, I do have a stuttering problem. I have to bring that up. When I get nervous, I start stuttering. But
it's all right, Jake. We'll beat you up later.
The hardest thing, for me was, I'm not like the I'm a little bit overweight. I'm 5'11", 270, and I'm not a wrestler. I'm more of a fan of the wrestling. I watched a lot of wrestling. I grew up in the night. I was born in '93. Sorry, I said that. I'm the youngest one here.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, well, he reminds me of it, Herb, every week.
I remind him every week because.
What area did you grow up in, Jake?
Mississippi. I live in Waynesboro. Mississippi.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's You ever heard of Laurel Hattiesburg area?
Yes.
I think they do shows. They do shows in Hattiesburg. I forget what company. I forget what companies do shows. I get like I remember watching old Herb Abrams stuff.
Herb Abrams. Yes.
Yeah,
There's a
not
name.
Yeah.
We
also
do a whole show
watched
just on her.
also
You have to get
AWA.
Dr. D. David Schultz on and let him talk to you about Herb Abrams.
Actually, we're thank you, my dear friend Eddie Mansfield is actually working on that for us as we speak.
Yeah,
I
also
just talked to the good doctor yesterday.
Did you really?
Oh yeah.
Would you tell him to call me because he's got my number already?
Yeah.
yeah. Hey, you
Thank
know
you,
what?
Herb.
I've
He was
also
in.
watched.
He was in for. He came in for a show for me this last October.
Yeah.
Did oh fabulous.
Or,
Yeah.
Sorry.
So Jake, hold on a second. I want to because Herb's got some really important stuff to promote. You got a Roku deal.
Yeah, we're launching our own Roku channel. It will be could be as early as tomorrow. Even I'm waiting for my people to finalize it, but it will be up and running. And they've downloaded a bunch of stuff. And we do the TV tapings once a month, just like they did at Wrestling at the Chase. We do a house show on a Saturday night, and then I hold the boys over on Sunday, and we tape four shows on a Sunday afternoon, and then we show them over the next, just like Sam used to do. And so we that's really going to be good. And then our local Charter Spectrum, Larry Matisek and I was on there for many years, and they've asked us to come back on there. So I'm trying to get a deal signed with them here in the St. Louis market area. Just trying to keep those memories alive.
Beautiful.
And
Absolutely, as are we, Herb. Honestly.
yeah,
we have a question. Wasn't Rocky Johnson in St. Louis quite often? Question mark.
Yes, he was. I just talked to his wife last night, Sheila, and
okay.
Rocky used to come in for me quite often, and great guy. Him and Tony Atlas, but Sheila, she's
a
back
character.
She's back down in Southern Missouri right now, and of course, that's Rocky, the father of Dwayne Johnson, The Rock.
Yeah,
and, great guy. I remember when. Rocky was big in St. Louis, and Dwayne was about 6-7 years old. Larry Matisek's wife would actually have him sit in the stands with her while Rocky was out wrestling.
Yes.
And Dwayne had a big afro hairdo about this big. And,
yes, he did.
But that he was always the hit in the dressing room, I can tell you.
I'll tell you what, man. That kid. Call him a kid. I gotta call him a kid. He's younger than me. He hit a chord with people and just took off like a freaking rocket.
Yeah.
I
had Rocky in several times. He was at the Gateway Grizzlies minor league ball team. I did a show for them, and I had Rocky, Ken Patera, Baron Von Raschke, Jerry Lawler. Harley was supposed to come in, but he had broke his hip that weekend. And to show you the type of guy Harley was, he said, Herb, I can lay in the back of a pickup truck if I got to be there. And I said, no, you're
absolutely
not coming. That, that's a commitment. That's when you're in the business. You keep your commitments, and Harley, one of the all-time greats, if not the greatest, Yeah.
Absolutely. I probably shouldn't say this, but I shared a pack of cigarettes with Harley Race back in the day. We sat out behind the Cherry Hill Hilton and killed probably a pack of cigarettes just bullshitting between the two of us. Sorry, I'm not allowed to say that, but I just
By the way, Little Lemmy's in the chat.
Hey, Little Lemmy's here. Lemmy, you got a question for Herb?
I sent not bad. Yeah, I actually put how are you doing? This is Herb.
Our friend Little Lemmy says hi, Herb. She's
a
very sweet girl.
Good,
yeah.
good. If she's a wrestling fan, I love her.
I want everybody to know that you can reach Herb Simmons on Facebook. Herb is very visible with his presence on Facebook. Herb, what your shoot job, as they say? What do you do when you're not in the wrestling business?
Well, I do a couple different things. My primary job that I love dearly, I love every day getting up, going to work, is for the county that I live in. I'm the 911 coordinator, in
Wow.
charge of the 911 services in our county. I think that we're the seventh largest county in the state of Illinois. And I'm the emergency medical, the EMA director, emergency management agency for the county. And then I've been the mayor of my hometown for the last 35 years.
God bless
So,
you. That's beautiful.
so
Well,
I've
thank you for
always,
your service, young man. I
well,
appreciate it.
I've always enjoyed the public service aspect of it, trying to help people for we just did a briefing yesterday, 660th day we've been fighting this pandemic.
Yeah.
We were doing daily briefings, and then we went to weekly, but now our numbers are, so we keep an eye on that. I work real close with our county health department, our doctors and our hospitals, and our first responders, who I just love dearly. I was in the ambulance business for over 35 years myself. I was in law
Fabulous.
enforcement in the past.
Well,
So
that's someone who lives with an EMT technician and a nurse. Thank you for your service. My wife is a bookkeeper, and I thank her for her service as
Yeah,
well.
my
Hey,
wife.
thank you for your service, Herb.
My wife was a nurse, and she got. We've been together 40 plus years now, and I introduced her to this crazy world of wrestling back then, and my children, my daughter now is stepping up to the plate because, like I said, I like to think that I'm going to be able to continue doing it, but my boys and my daughter hopefully will carry on what I've done, and of course I razz them, tell them they won't be able to do it as good as I do it, but that's okay.
Well, has your family ever asked you, have you taken leave of your senses?
Yeah, oh, yeah. My daughter shakes her head every day when she's sitting here hearing me talk to like Dr. D. David Schultz or Terry Funk or somebody. She's sitting there taking
Yeah.
it all in, and because she knows I get a real pleasure out of still reminiscing with those guys,
Oh
because
my God, yeah.
I've said all along, and Barbara Goodish and I have talked about this. I do what I do, one, because I'm a fan. I always was, always have
Yeah.
been, but I love the guys that, I say, they laid the foundation of what we continue to build on. And that's what
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. It really is the bedrock of why I do what I do and why you do what you do. Um, you know, our great stars they're leaving us. They're dying.
yes,
We were 1 week away from Butch Reed when he passed away.
Butch worked for me many times.
Yeah.
He was big, and he was in St. Louis quite a bit, but he was more so in the Kansas City area for the Central States. But
Yeah.
what a great guy, and plus he loved rodeos, and man, oh man.
I listened back to some of our shows, and it's like it's like listening to memory lane. A lot of these guys aren't here anymore.
Well, and that's why we do a social media show now on Sunday nights, but before that I was doing recordings, kind of like we're doing now, and I had the Jerry Briscoes and the Brian Blairs and Spike Ubers and people like that on, each and every Sunday night, just to try to keep those memories alive. And there's still a lot of us out there that remember all those guys that, the Dick the Bruiser fans. I was fortunate to buy his TV tapes from his wife before she passed away, Mrs. Aflis. So I have this collection of his TV stuff, and but
amazing.
Yeah, it's and again, we'll put them out there eventually, and Larry and I reproduce those footage that we have. We've had them out there for 20 years now. The 12 volumes of the St. Louis Classic Wrestling Chase. We're the ones who put them out there.
Oh, Jake, put that Bruiser Brody tape up. I want to promote this.
I got it. Let me find
shout out to Barbara Goodish, by the way. Love you, Barbara. Also, a shout out to our friend Darla Staggs. We love you too, baby.
Have you watched that tape? Have you watched that tape yet?
I have. In fact, I'm on my second round with it.
Did you see me and Larry Matisek on it?
Yes, sir. That's why I went. That's why Jake just put it up for us.
Yeah.
Herb Simmons is featured prominently, along with Larry Matisek, in this Wrestling's Last Rebel, Bruiser Brody. It's the Frank Goodish story. and it's really put together with love. Barb had a big hand in this.
Yes, she did.
I thank her for not only for the book, but for the 3 DVD set. It's an amazing, and thank you, High Spots, for doing it right.
Yes, they did.
High
Yeah.
Spots did a great job.
Well, in fact, when you had Barbara on your show, she made a statement about the business that her late husband and I was going to do, and I've never told that story all these years because really, one, it wasn't worth anybody's business other than Frank and I, and Larry was aware of it.
Yeah.
And I was shocked when she brought that up to you. And but we were one of the first independent promotions that Frank worked for here in the Midwest. And
well,
I'll tell you
here's
what,
the thing. I think the reason
actually,
she did. Oh, I'm sorry, Herb. Go ahead.
He was actually in 1988, that weekend before he got murdered. He was with Larry and I. I had a bar that I owned, and he spent that whole weekend with us. We had a room upstairs, a big area. We called it the Brody Room.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to go up there and relax and have the VIP people in. And but that was the weekend before the terrible time.
Well, the interesting thing is, and I think Barb brought that up because I had mentioned to Barbara earlier in that interview that I knew personally of a situation where Frank was involved, and I didn't know who the other person was. I know now it was you, but I knew that Frank was involved with another person in a business venture that I believe that had something to do with either. And I had the state wrong. I thought it was Florida. It was Missouri, I believe.
Yeah, it was gonna spread out, but we were starting in Missouri.
Yeah.
But Frank had made so many connections in and around his travels, both in and outside of the wrestling business. And a couple of gentlemen and I talked yesterday. He'd have been 75 years old now if he'd still be with us. And the shape that he was in, if he was still here, guys like him, and with Bob Orton helping me with the Ace Wrestling Academy, and if Larry was still here, and if our plans would have came together the way we had a business plan worked out, we'd have been the fans would have been very, very pleased with what was going to happen.
Well, I'll tell you what, brother. For the sake of history, I'm pleased that everything worked out the way it did. Anyway, there's always a reason for things working out the way they do.
Oh, we got a couple comments.
Go ahead, because we're gonna take a couple of comments and questions, Jake. Then we're gonna say goodnight to Herb.
All right, little Lemmy said
he has been incredibly generous with his time tonight.
She said that
my time is your time.
Little Lemmy said, I watched wrestling in the 90s with my stepdad, the greatest memory ever. And the dishwasher said, Herb is the last of a dying breed.
Exactly.
True gentleman and a real wrestling promoter.
And that's the truth. It really is. And that's why this show existed.
Yep.
We were the last podcast ever, and that's on record. The last podcast ever to have Dominic DeNucci.
That's what I was going to talk about. We were the last.
Dominic passed right after that. We were
great guy.
Yeah, I mean, among a giant among men, he was just a sweet man, and a hell of a worker, and never forgot his friends, and never. The thing about Dominic DeNucci that I will always remember, he never tried to be anything but Dominic.
No.
He was just Dominic.
Another guy like that was Nikolai Volkov.
Well, we have a deep connection to Nikolai on this show. His manager and partner, Nikita Brezhnikov, is a dear friend of mine and a dear friend of the show. You mentioned Ox Baker. A dear friend of this show is the man who delivered Ox's eulogy, Mike Messier, filmmaker and documentarian. Very dear friend of the show.
Ox was actually, I've got a video of him sitting on the side of our ring singing his Hillbilly Wrestler song the month before he actually passed away. In fact, when he came in town, I
Wow.
had one of my people pick him up at the airport that morning, and Ox and I hadn't seen him in a long time, even though we had talked, and I wanted to bring him in because I knew he'd had some failing health, and
Yeah.
he always loved coming in. And so I get him checked in at the casino hotel, and they went to pick
Yeah.
him up that evening, and they couldn't get him to answer the door at the hotel room. And of course, they're
Yeah.
calling me in a frantic, and I said, "To get the hotel people there," because I thought something happened. We went in,
Right.
and he actually was sleeping in the chair, but he was a bad diabetic. And
Yeah.
I thought, man, oh man. And then, of course, 30 days later, he passes away. But
Yeah.
I've got that tape of him singing that song. And he was always a big hit with us here in the St. Louis area.
I'll tell you, we love
He hit
Ox.
me he hit me in the head one time. I had him and Bruiser Brody at the Fairmount Park racetrack at an outside show. And, of course, he was another one that didn't see real well. And I was at ringside, and big crowd at the park there that day. And of course, Brody doing his normal match, he ends up throwing him out. And next thing I know, Ox grabs me by the tie, and boy, he hauls off. He always taped those arms up, And he hauls off and hits me in the side of the head, and I saw stars. And they had to dress in the tack room where the jockeys dressed at. And so I come walking in there, and they got back in the tack room, and Ox is in there, and he's man. He said, I don't know who that fan was out there, but I hauled off and clobbered the hell out of somebody. And Frank's sitting over there just chugging down one of those little Miller ponies that he used to drink after a match. And he started laughing, and he said, well, guess what? You probably just worked the day for free because that was Herb you hit.
On that note, my friends, we will say gonna thank Herb Simmons, the consummate professional, the consummate promoter. Yes, sir.
And if I can plug one thing, February the 5th, we've got a big show. It's a fundraiser for a local fire chief, a good friend of ours.
Okay.
That is going through some major health issues. He's 50 years old. Guy that just went out and his career in firefighting is since he put his first set of bunker gears on, he's always helped people. And we're doing a big wrestling fundraiser.
Okay.
Ironically, back at the place that Bruiser Brody first wrestled for me at the Belclair Fairgrounds in Belleville, Illinois.
Oh, wow. Well, I'll tell you what, Herb, on behalf of the show, put us down for $100.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we have an ad that's going out there. We'll do that. And then, but all the wrestlers are donating their time, and it's going to be a big fire department's going to be there doing display. But we're, you hear the firemen say, hey, we want to fill the boot when they're doing their boot drives and stuff. Well, we want to fill the building for Chief Al LaPointe and his family because he's got some major issues. And so we're just trying to spread the word out there. And I know you get a lot of people watching it. So if you live here in the Illinois side of the Mississippi River, outside of St. Louis, come on over on February 5th.
Absolutely. And on behalf of Herb Simmons and on behalf of Jam and Jake Hudson, I am Mad Dog DeCipio saying good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Till we see you next time. Keep on wrestling with Future.
All right, and I'm ending it right now.
Sir.